Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Purpose Up podcast. Today, I am super excited to have a very special guest, Jason JG Goldberg. Welcome, Jason.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Super psyched to have you. So I thought about bringing you in with a bio, but you've done so much crazy stuff and you do so much crazy stuff. It's tough to encapsulate a former rapper, a writer, speaker, and lots of things I'm missing. So give us the short intro to yourself, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah, okay. I am all those things you just said. I am a speaker, a coach, an author, an entrepreneur, all the stuff that nobody really gives a shit about, and they're just titles that are cool for a business card. But what I hopefully do in the world is I open people up to more joy and playfulness, and as a result, they can be more successful and have a little better experience of the world and have better relationships and maybe more success in business or whatever else comes up when you're more joyful and playful and less stressed out and serious all the time.
Nice. So I'm going to put a pin in being more joyful because everybody obviously wants to know, how can I be more joyful, including myself? But let's take a trip back in time. You weren't always so joyful, were you?
Well, I think I was always joyful. I think I always had joy, but the thing is I also had an equal amount of like anger and sadness and depression. So it's like anytime there wasn't joy, there was no homeostasis. There was like deep, dark sadness and anger. So yeah, it was just a different balance back then than what it is now.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm glad the balance has improved. Take us back. I don't know if you want to start way back, coming out of the womb, or maybe take us to early career. Where's appropriate to start?
Well, it's always appropriate to start with my mother's womb. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure she's a Jewish mother, so she can hear everything we're saying anyways. So yeah, I mean, I think, the most important part of my story, at least what I think is important and what I wrote about and what I talk about a lot is really kind of what we were saying just then is I was very successful from a fairly young age professionally.
Right.
Got into IT when I was, I guess, around 16 or 17 officially. I actually had my first kind of little side IT gig when I was 13, but that's off the books and illegal. So 16, 17 got into IT and got into computer kind of stuff and was making six figures in my mid to late 20s as the director of engineering and operations for a tech firm in Orlando. We were just talking about Florida, which I love so much. And I was doing really well in my business, but my entire life I'd had a lot of struggles with my physical weight. Okay. I was always very, very overweight from a very young age. I didn't have this frame of reference where a lot of people, they get really overweight and then they say, oh, I wish I could get back to the weight that I was at 18. I'm like, shit, I was still fat at 18. Like I had no frame of reference for what it felt like to have a normal body, at least normal by, doctor health standards. So right. As of probably first grade, I was a chunky kid, and then it kept getting worse and worse and worse. I was 250 pounds when I was 15 and had gotten up to 332 pounds in my late 20s.
Okay.
So it was, that's serious business, dude. That's like, you're dying. You may not make it to 40 or 50.
Yeah. I remember being a chubby youngster with the husky pants, and that was tough enough, but I couldn't imagine.
You were in advertising, so you should know husky is the worst word in the entire world. Nobody feels good about shopping in the husky section.
I'm still traumatized from my dad checking the waist in front of everybody else at the store just to make sure that they were big enough.
Oh, the fingers, was it the fingers in the waistband and a little bit of a pull? Are these too tight, fat ass? Are you going to sit down, or are you going to pop a button and kill somebody across the room? Yeah, I remember that. Oh God, I think we have to say that. So, although that's impossible because mine left. I always like to say my dad was a professional magician. He disappeared when my mom was 6 months pregnant. It was amazing. So I get up to 332 pounds. Yeah, they're not all winners. And so I was really successful in my career, like I said, doing really well professionally, had carried around this physical weight for a long time. And what was even more debilitating for me was all the other types of weight that I was carrying around.
Right.
And that's where we talk about, the anger and the sadness and the depression. And I was somebody who had such anger issues. I was just telling her, I have a new friend that I just met like a week and a half ago, and we were having a conversation over the weekend, and I was telling her, back in the day, I used to be just so angry, and she's like, I can't see it. It's not possible. And I'm like, no idea. I used to be, now I never got into like physical altercations. I would never direct it towards a human being in that way. Right. Like if somebody cut me off in traffic, I would like chase them in traffic. I would do nothing if I caught them because I was such a wuss, but I felt like triggered. I had to chase them. And I remember having a conversation with my boss when I was in my corporate job, and it was a conversation that pissed me off. And when we hung up the phone, I literally took my $600 smartphone. This is before iPhones, but it was like some kind of a smartphone, and threw it against the wall and shattered it into like 1,000 pieces. And it just happened so quick. Like it was something where I always said, that's just the way I am. Like that was my mantra in life. There was no separation. Something happened. I was pissed off. I reacted. And that was my MO throughout my entire life. And so regardless of how successful I was in my business, no matter what happened, if it didn't go directly according to plan for me, I would explode.
Right.
And so that was kind of, a big thing happened for me, where in this corporate IT job where I was in for the last 7 or so years of my corporate career before I became an entrepreneur, which was in 2011. So I've been out of corporate now for almost 7 years, 6.5 years. And I had tried to make a purchase online one morning on Amazon for socks. I'm a huge sock person. I love funky, weird socks. Okay. And my car, are you into socks at all?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a sock connoisseur, but I can appreciate a guy who's into socks and a good pair.
Nobody would say they're a sock connoisseur because that's like saying you're a cat lady. Like, even if it's true, you don't want to admit it.
But I dated a woman who was a sock connoisseur. So she tried to up my sock game with mild success.
With mild success. I love that there's degrees of success of being a sock connoisseur. It's beautiful. I'll level you up. I'll purpose you up around your socks. So I tried to make this purchase, and the card got declined. And anybody else watching this, 99.9% of people watching this, if you try to make a purchase and your card gets declined, you're like, oh, that sucks. All right, I guess I'll have to figure it out. Not me. Like, I just flew off the handle. I totally lost my shit. And I actually tried the card again in this total place of anger. Card got declined again. So now I'm even just like boiling mad. And on the screen, it said, call your bank for further assistance, because it already processed once or twice now, and it wasn't going through. And right. So I storm out of my office, and I call the bank, and I'm just super, super angry. And I'm borderline yelling at this super sweet guy. I remember his name was Steven. He was so nice, and he's like trained to handle idiots like me. So he's like very calm. And every time the more calm he gets, the more I want to murder his family.
Be okay,
like,
sir.
Yeah. It's, you know what? We're going to take care of you. I understand that this is really, really, I'm like, no, stop understanding me. Screw your empathy. Fix the problem. So I was totally just batshit crazy. And long story short, he told me that my card had been declined because there was some potentially fraudulent activity on the card. And of course, again, a sane person would say, oh, thank goodness the bank is watching out for me. No, I got more pissed. And I demanded to know what the fees were, or what the charges were they thought were fraudulent. And what he told me was that there were 4 fast food transactions that had occurred in one day in Orlando, where I lived. And they assumed somebody had stolen my card and were making small purchases to test it, to make sure it hadn't been cut off before a bigger purchase would happen. So I guess they had these kind of safeguards in place.
You triggered an algorithm with your diet.
I triggered an yeah, and this is what I say. Like, and this was me. It wasn't fraudulent charges. I had eaten at 4 fast food restaurants in one day, and this is what I now affectionately say, the day the universe cut me off. It took $1 billion bank to say, you are an out of control fat ass, and we are taking away access to your money because of your choices in food.
And it's funny that the bank is being the good guy there.
For once, yes. They did, man. They cut me off. And, and the thing is, it's not this story where it's like, and then I finally realized something needed to change. It's like, no, I'm not stupid. I've been fat my whole life. Like I had wake up calls constantly, and I just I wasn't answering the phone, right? It's right. Like they kept calling and saying, dude, do something about this, dude, do something about this. And I was like, oh no, later, or it's not that big of a deal or whatever. And not thinking about the moments where I would literally be on the floor in my closet crying because nothing fit me. Because everything I put on just felt uncomfortable, and I was always shifting stuff, and I just was always looking in the mirror and always feeling disgusting, and like would get so angry that I would just like rip the clothes off my body because they weren't fitting right. Like it was such a depressing thing. And maybe that's why I didn't face it, because I knew it was going to take hard work, and I guess the pain hadn't gotten bad enough. But for whatever reason, that day on the phone with the bank, it kind of felt like I was on this burning platform where right. I had to choose, like either I'm going to jump or I'm going to be burned alive. And that really started my journey into figuring out, A, why the hell am I so angry all the time? And B, why am I holding on to so much weight mentally, physically, emotionally? Why do I continue to be committed to hanging on to this weight? And that journey started 7 years ago, and actually more, 2009. So almost 8 years ago now, 9 years ago. And this is what's happened as a result.
Okay. That's, no pun intended. That's heavy.
It is very, very heavy. The pun should be intended because it was a good one. That was, it was serious, man.
So what did that, well, I guess first chronologically, there was some rapping in there. Was that part of the anger portion?
Yeah, I was like the extended member of the Insane Clown Posse. No, I wasn't an angry rapper, which is funny enough. Like the only place where anger would have been acceptable in my life, and I didn't exhibit it. I never thought about that. That's funny. So the rapping was from the time I was in high school, probably around 18, 19, until the time I was 25. I did it like pretty seriously. Like we were doing shows all over the East Coast, mainly in Florida, and had a lot of recognition. We're opening up for major artists anytime they came into Florida. And then at the 25-year-old mark, I really realized like I had this career that's really taking off, and I can't really dedicate time to both. And the rap wasn't really paying me, and certain things about the whole thing just wasn't really lighting me up as much anymore. So I shifted and went directly into only focusing on my career. And then I came out of retirement and did a song probably, God, how long ago now? It's 5-6 years ago. And now I've actually just started bringing rap back into my work. So now I do like spoken word pieces as a part of my keynote speeches and things like that. So I've actually brought the rap back in now, which is super fun.
Nice. Fully integrated.
I am a fully integrated man.
Nice. So let's go back to the start of the new you. What did you seek out, and how did you make those shifts? What were the keys there?
Yeah. So my ex actually was a big part of that, because she had been through a ton of stuff in her life, just personal like trauma. And she didn't seem to get angry about stuff like I did.
Right.
And so I had really committed to this, that's just the way I am mentality. And she actually called me on it one day and didn't give me an ultimatum. It was ultimatum-ish, right? Like I say, I'm not a Jew, I'm Jew-ish. Right. It was ultimatum-ish. When I blew up, and somebody cut me off in traffic, and I chased them, and I was all mad. And once they got away and we were back to just driving again, she asked me, why do you do that? Why do you always react with such anger? And I said, my mantra, that's just the way I am. And she very lovingly said, well, I won't be with a man who thinks he has no control over his emotions.
Ooh, nice. Zinger.
So you see what I mean? It wasn't fix this or I'm leaving. It was like, oh, well, here's the conditions of the game I'm willing to play. It's up to you what you do with that, which respect, like she gets mad respect for that. And so that was kind of another wake-up call on the anger side to be like, well, I'm somebody who loves to model. I love to reverse engineer. I've always been like a reverse engineering kind of person. I still am to this day. I think it's a big part of how I've been successful is reverse engineering and then making something my own as I go back forward. And so I looked at her as a model, and she had done, her own work and therapy and all that stuff. And I wasn't interested in that, but I decided to like start digging into whatever this personal growth stuff was.
Right.
And initially it was digging in to figure out how to change everybody else around me, right? If I read enough books, then I can change everybody so they'll finally deal with what an amazing person I am. And finally realized that was a little bit misdirected. I think Think and Grow Rich was the first personal growth book I really read, and I absolutely hated it, because when you don't understand the power of the mind, that is an entire book of teasing. It just keeps saying, and by now you probably have seen The Secret. I'm like, I haven't seen The Secret. Stop telling me it's a secret. Just how have you sold any of these books?
I'm not rich.
Exactly. So going back 2 years later, I'm like, oh, now I totally get it. So I hated that book. And then really my foray into this was when I left IT, I became an entrepreneur. Coaching didn't start until 4.5 years ago, coaching and speaking. I launched 2 other more traditional startups. And so I was reading books more on leadership and management. And they were books on leadership and management that started kind of diving more into the soft skills and emotional intelligence and things like that. So it started opening my mind to a lot of this stuff. And it was really when the tables really started turning and I really started having major transformation was when I really started following and then working with the guy who became my coach, who's now one of my dear friends, a guy by the name of Steve Chandler.
Right.
And Chandler wrote this book called Reinventing Yourself that introduced me to this distinction, which is now the core of my work in my own way, that really had me understand the power that I have over creating the experience of the world that I'm experiencing. And that has changed everything for me.
So let's dive into that. So I can just reinvent my world. That seems pretty radical.
Yeah, it's super radical. And that's what I say. Like so my book, so Prison Break, I always get the wrong shoulder. Prison Break, I get to like do a Pillsbury Doughboy thing. Prison Break is all about this distinction of shifting in any given moment from being a prisoner of circumstance, where you are at the whim of the economy and at the whim of whoever's in the White House and at the whim of the song on the radio that reminds you of your ex, and your entire experience of life is dictated by all these circumstances.
Right.
And it's the way I lived the first 30 years of my life. So I'm an expert. Like if anybody listening here hasn't done it for 30 years, don't be jealous that you're inferior to my prisonerness. I was a master at being a prisoner. And the other side of that is being a self-leader, right? And being a self-leader and exhibiting self-leadership is a moment-by-moment choice to own your experience, to own your interpretations of events, to own the fact that the more awareness you have and the more ability you have to understand where your experience is actually coming from, that it's coming from your thinking and not coming from circumstance, you have limitless possibility in any given moment to reinvent your entire life. And so when you said it was radical, you're absolutely right. To me, self-leadership is a radical form of personal responsibility that most people think is either not available to them or they haven't had it modeled. I didn't have it modeled. I was raised in a household that was all prisoner. My mom did an amazing job raising me. She's an incredible woman and she works her ass off and I love her. And she was raised that way. So being a prisoner or being a self-leader is not a permanent, pervasive thing. You're not born that way and then you're that way forever. You don't read my book, understand self-leadership, and then you're a self-leader forever. It is always a moment-by-moment choice.
So what does that look like where the rubber hits the road? So for example, I could imagine what that self-leadership looks like. I can understand I've got self-limiting beliefs. How do you actually get someone to overcome those?
It's a great question. So one of the first things I do, and this is my understanding in self-leadership, even though it's my book that I wrote, if I had to rewrite it now, there's so many things that I would probably take out and deepen, and it doesn't make the book any less useful. It's just my understanding keeps deepening, and that's the way it's supposed to be, right?
We're all evolving.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was super helpful for me. It will continue to be helpful for me, and it's helpful for a lot of people. But what I've gotten to the place of now is no more overcoming, right? I stop trying to overcome things, because if I'm trying to overcome something, then I'm assuming it's something that's outside of me, right?
Okay.
And I'm assuming it's something outside of me that is significant. So that's been a big shift for me is, so the two major things I talk about is self-leadership, and something that goes right in line with that, it's actually kind of like the meta for self-leadership, is living a not so serious life, right? I really truly believe that if we were more sincere about our lives and less serious about them, if we loosened our grip on the story of what we think life is supposed to be, if we stop being so attached to our preferences not being met every single second of the day, we'd have so much more creative energy to actually do something that matters in the world, right? Whether it matters to other people or ourselves. So I try not to overcome things, because now I'm making them significant. If I notice what's really going on and I say, I have this limiting, and this happens to me all the time, Ben. This is not, again, I'm not a guru. Like, I'm uniquely qualified to teach this because I have prisoner moments all the time and I get to test my own stuff, right? So this happens to me all the time, where I have a thought that pops in my head that says, you have to grow the business faster. If you don't, you're going to run out of money. You're not serving people powerfully enough. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. You're not doing enough. You ate too much shit today. You didn't go to the gym. All of the judgments, right? We're so good at that. We're so good at beating ourselves up. And if beating ourselves up was going to work, it would have worked by now. And so what I see now is I do this thing, which what I teach my students and what I live by is I call it my Britney Spears moment, right? And so a Britney Spears moment, this is not everybody's having like visions of like, getting out of the cab with no underwear, or like, stabbing vans with umbrellas and shaving your head. Not those kind of Britney moments. The Britney moment I'm talking about is a thought pops in my head that says, you should be doing more. You're not doing enough. Right. And the Britney Spears dialogue is, oops, I did it again. A thought popped in my head. I took it seriously. I made it significant. And now my entire experience of the world is being colored by the fact that I'm believing this thought. So I can try to overcome it, but that's as dumb as trying to overcome a pen,
Right.
Like, why would I overcome a pen? It's like, oh, there's a pen. Cool. That's neat. And a pen can be used against me. It can ruin my clothes. I could stab myself with it. Like, I can use the pen to be damaging, but a pen in and of itself is neutral, dude. It's like, it's tofu.
Right.
It has no flavor until I put a story with it and flavor it. And so the more I can do that, the less I experience all these heavy emotions, and I don't have to do anything to fight through or overcome them in the process.
And you're willing to make that concession of having Britney Spears have so much mental real estate. If it works.
Because when I think of it, she's always in the red latex, and that was her prime. So we're not talking about like 2017 Britney. We don't go there. We go like 2007. I have no idea. 1999, whatever she was hot. That's right. The Britney Spears that gets real estate in my head.
Fair enough. But you're not a slave for her.
Okay, no, I am not a slave for her. That is true. I am a self-leader for her.
Okay. Staying on message. I like it.
I'm trying.
So I think that all makes a lot of sense. And then, so if we, as Tim Ferriss likes to say, memento style, go back in time and think about that as it relates to your weight loss. What was the key there in terms of both the mental and the physical plan to make that happen?
Yeah, one of the big things that I know that I did a ton when I was younger, and still do it now. I don't even know why I say when I was younger. I still do it now. But one of the easy indicators of somebody who's in prisoner mode is living in this all or nothing mindset, right? That it's all or nothing. It's everything. It's perfect, or it's absolutely nothing at all, or I won't do anything. And weight loss was one of those things. And I think goals in general are one of those things. And this is the reason people have the New Year's resolution to go to the gym 5 days a week, and they miss one day and they think they're a failure and they quit, right? It's not because they don't have willpower. It's not because they're not committed. It's because they set themselves up for failure.
Right.
And so one of the ways I try to live my life now, especially when it comes to anything that's a long-term goal like weight loss or things like that, is it's all inside my class and all my groups. We always use the hashtag JFT, just for today, right? And so when people say, how'd you lose 130 pounds? I say, I didn't. I lost 1 pound 130 times. And to me, that's a much easier way to do any form of transformation. Like I'm not looking for major transformation in my life anymore. Like, I had some pretty major insights that shifted things for me. And now I'm at a spot where major transformation for me is shortening the window of time from when I get into prisoner mode to when I can get back into self-leader mode. And that's a big deal. So that's what's important to me nowadays, is how quickly can I close that window of time between when I resort back. Maybe it's kind of a default. There's still some programming and conditioning there. And I see myself getting angry, and to be able to slow that down and say, oh, there's that thought again that's telling me things should be different than they are. And it's only because I'm attached to the fact that I think things should be different than they are that I'm upset. If I can notice that and I don't have to overcome it, I can just say the oops, I did it again thing and then move on. To me, that's success. That's how you make progress on things that are a long-term kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In other words, you don't set impossible goals and you don't beat yourself up when you don't make them, and you just keep going.
Yeah. And, John Wooden always talked about make every day your masterpiece, right? That was one of his big things. And, this is something I'm doing with my clients right now too, because I had to do it on my own. This year, I have a lot of really cool stuff that I'm launching. Some of it is the very first time I'm doing it. And I feel the edginess. I feel the overwhelm. I feel the stress coming up. And I've just hired 3 new people after having 0 people on my team for almost 4.5 years. And so now it's like onboarding 3 new people while trying to build all this stuff. Like, there's a lot going on.
Right.
And so it can be very easy for me to kind of sink into the overwhelm of all this. And so it's great for me to be able to slow down and say, okay, what we're doing right now is we're only focusing on the first quarter of the year, right? We're going to have one main goal for the first quarter of the year. And this is for myself and for my clients. We have another little acronym. The acronym is NQ1. So once they pick something that's their quarter 1 goal, anything else they say they want to accomplish, I say, that's great. And it's not quarter 1, NQ1. That comes up later. And as soon as I did that for this quarter, and my clients will be doing the same thing, and you feel this immediate sense of freedom, this immediate sense of levity, of lightness. I say, this is my one goal, and everything I do or 80% of what I do should fulfill that goal, should go towards that goal. If it doesn't, it's a low yield activity and it's something that's not the best use of my time, and it gets pushed away or it gets pushed to somebody else or it gets pushed off into the next quarter.
All right. So in other words, you're not overwhelming yourself with too many goals, keeping a keen focus, and that gives you some negative space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's so important because we can't, one of the biggest problems we have in our society is that we've pluralized the word priority. You can't have multiple, the most important thing. That's not how it works. Right. So yes, there's going to be 20% of my time that I have, to do the things that I've committed to doing. And I enjoy doing those things. I'm blessed and grateful to have those things to be committed to. And if I don't keep my eye on the prize with that other big thing, I'm going to be spread too thin. So now with the 3 new team members coming on, instead of me scrambling, okay, well, yeah, I want them to do, and I would like this done. And it's like, no, hey, all 3 of you, here's our one goal for the quarter. Everything you do, or the vast majority of things you do, should be going towards this. What does that look like for you? And what should that look like for you? And then it makes it so much easier. Everything gets so much easier.
That does sound like that would make things easier. I'm trying to think about all the things I could streamline with that method.
Yeah.
And then, your other goal when you're working with people is to make it fun. So outside of that negative space, how do you help people enjoy?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because a lot of people have a misconception that when I talk about playfulness, I'm talking about actually playing games or like, shooting people with Nerf guns or throwing water balloons or whatever. And that stuff's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that stuff. That's not my thing. I'm not like let's get zany, weird, and do crazy stuff and whatever. Like I'm that kind of person in general, but to me, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm really passionate about, because I've seen the role it continues to play in my own life and the people I work with, is it's about bringing a spirit of play to what you do, right? There's this, and I actually have it on. I have these 2 little bracelets, which are probably impossible to read, but one says spirit of play, right? And it's my reminder to always bring a spirit of play to whatever I'm doing, not requiring that the thing I'm doing be fun. In fact, there's a sign behind me that says, how could this be the funnest thing I could possibly do, right? How can I bring fun to the thing? That's a big self-leader prisoner distinction too. The prisoner requires the task they're doing to bring them the feeling they want. The self-leader brings the feeling to the task instead. Right. And so for me, a spirit of play is how can I show up with enthusiasm? How can I show up with a spirit of play? My belief is that creativity is greater than circumstance. The more creativity you can overwhelm a problem with, the less the problem actually is problematic. So that's the goal of bringing a spirit of play, is like, how can I play with this is a big question we ask ourselves in my groups. Like something comes up, how can I play with this? There's a Japanese saying, I think it's Japanese. It is aso-based kotoba. Aso-based kotoba is essentially using the language of play to replace the language of work. So you don't work at the piano, you play the piano. You don't work on a sales call or work on your business. You play on a sales call, you play in your business. And it's just a whole different energy that you bring to the thing that's in front of you.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It reminds me of a close relative to that question. What would this look like if it were easy?
Yeah. For sure. I love that. Yeah. The what if questions are incredible. Like, what if it was all easy? I wrote a post on that recently. Like all this stuff that we think is difficult. What if it was all easy? What if it was super, super easy? Some of us don't want to admit that though, because if you were raised as somebody whose only model of success was ridiculous hard work and 24-hour grind and hustle, then there's a sense that I'm being irresponsible and not being a serious entrepreneur or a serious whatever if I'm not killing myself. Right? It's like, who am I to be doing this? I don't deserve for it to be easy. And so to people that think that, I just say, challenge that. Have you tested to see if showing up in an easy, joyful, playful state makes you any less high performing? My experience is that it's directly proportionate. The more playful I am and the less of a tight grip I have on whatever situation's in front of me, the higher performing I am and the less exhausted I am when I'm done.
I think the yogi gurus would agree with you.
Yes, absolutely.
I also like the sign as a reminder to that, to kind of keep it in the forefront of your brain.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love that stuff.
Cool. So bringing it back home, when you think about purpose, what do you think your purpose is right now?
Okay. So first of all, that's the first time anybody's ever asked me that question in a way that actually resonates with me, because you said right now, right? I really dislike, I have a video about this too that's called like, if you still haven't found your purpose. And the crux of it is, I'm sick of everybody putting so much pressure on people to find the one thing that's going to be their purpose for life. Like, screw that. Let's be present. So if I'm being super genuine and super literal, my purpose right now is to have as good of a connection with you as possible and provide as much value to you and your listeners as possible. So that's like the immediate purpose right now. Nothing else matters, right? Bills don't matter. Clients don't matter. My own personal growth doesn't matter. My health doesn't matter. Nothing matters in this moment but this conversation. But if we zoom out a little more and we talk about purpose in business, for example, which actually my life purpose right now and my business purpose right now are pretty much the same.
Right.
I tell people my business plan as it stands right now is to leave people with 5% more joy than I found them.
Okay.
That's it. And whatever way that takes shape, if it's another book, if it's the book I have, if it's coaching, if it's speaking, if it's a course, if it's just a conversation at a Target or a Starbucks, that's my goal, 5%, and my job is fulfilled.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you think is good for the listeners to know before we wrap things up?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess just in the same vein of the what if question, like, you know, our mortality is such a beautiful thing to recognize, right? You know, like,
we're all gonna die.
Yeah, except we're all going to die. It's like, it's so cliche, but it's like, you know, you live and you die, and you know, nobody gets out of this thing alive, and that's great. And when we have a scare, right? When we have a scare, we're really into that. You know, one of the things that I think is such a beautiful thing and such a travesty was that on September 12th, 2001, you never saw more united fronts of human beings than you saw in the United States of America. And a few months later, we're back to hating each other. So it's great that like things can get us into that mode, but it's on us to go first, right? We have to show, and again, it's so cliche, be the change you want to see in the world. Like, I love that I'm just rephrasing quotes from everybody else, and that's my entire career now. But it's so important for that language to be translated to people that are in the world today.
Or alternatively, manufacture calamity to bring people together. Either that.
We could do that too. That's actually a great business plan. Let's figure out how to do that. You and me, Ben. Two Jews doing that. It's not like we don't have a bad enough name in the media. Let's make it worse. So you definitely could do that. But the other thing, like, you know, and this is actually something I did at the end of the year. I was feeling really called to practicing more gratitude. I realized I was being just kind of a dick to myself the last couple of weeks of the year. And I'm like, you know what? Gratitude keeps showing up for me, the need to practice more gratitude. So I put on Facebook, like, hey, I'm going to do this gratitude group. There's nothing to buy. There's no upsell. I don't have a gratitude course. Like, I just feel like this is bigger than just me. Who's in? And 70 people joined this gratitude group, like within a day or two. And all we did for the last 2 weeks of the year, every single day, was practice some form of like gratitude meditation in the morning. And a lot of us changed it. Like, we started with one particular meditation we were all doing, and then we all kind of started doing our own thing. And what ended up being really powerful for me, and what I'll leave you with, I know this is kind of long-winded to get to the point, but I hope it'll be worth it, is that when we were really good, and this I think starts as a child and also really gets carried into corporate, we're really good at seeing when people do stuff wrong, right? We're really good at catching people doing things wrong, right? It's like we get satisfaction out of that, especially in the corporate world. But we very rarely look out for people doing things right. And so it's one thing to do that with human beings. I think it's very powerful, but we can do that with everything around us. Like, there are so many things with you and I talking right now. There are so many things that are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and that are doing exactly what I would prefer them to do. My lights are working, the internet's working, my chair's holding me up, my laptop's working, my mic is working, the air conditioning, everything is doing exactly what I want it to do, and yet I'm not even thinking about it. And it's asking nothing in return.
Right.
So the more I focused on the fact that 99.9% of my preferences are being met all of the time, the more I can be more creative about doing what I want to do in the world, and not leaking all this energy wishing that the little 1% of things not going my way should be different.
All right. I think that's a beautiful way to end it. Where can people find you online?
They can find me in all of the TV show Lost Facebook groups. No, I'm just kidding. I actually was a huge Lost fan. That just came to me though. You can find me on Facebook for sure. If you actually go to fbjason.com, like Facebook, fbjason.com, it'll take you to my Facebook page. thejasongoldberg.com is my website. JasonGoldberg.com was taken, as you and I have talked about having these horrible names. So I got a pretentious one like the Jason Goldberg. PlayfulProsperity.com is my main signature course that I just love more than anything. And for people that are watching this that would like to get a free, damn it, I did it again, free copy of Prison Break. I tried to get it on the first try and I didn't. I've set up a link for you guys that's just for you guys to get a free digital, audio, or paperback version of Prison Break for free. If you go to getprisonbreak.com/purposeup, and I'll give you that link so you can have it to post with the show. You can get a free copy, and I hope you enjoy it.
Amazing. I really appreciate it. That's awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It was great talking with you. Thank you so much for dropping your knowledge, and had a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for creating the space, and thanks for being an awesome person with a cool name.
All right. Talk soon.
All right, man.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Purpose Up with me, Ben Stein. Please subscribe here on YouTube so you can be updated on when the latest episodes come out, as well on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you consume podcasts. And since you're still sticking around, I've got a special free gift for you. Just go to purposeup.com/free gift or click this link here to get book recommendations from me, a guided meditation, as well as a book I wrote on how to live your life more purposefully. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it and you.